World leaders strongly condemning Russia's missile attacks. European Parliament President Roberta Metsola tweeting, "What is happening now in Kyiv is sickening. It shows the world again the regime we are faced with, one that targets indiscriminately, one that rains terror and death down on children. This is criminal. They will be held to account. Ukraine will win. Europe will not look away." Let's get more from Roberta Metsola. She joins me now live via Skype from Brussels. You say Europe must not look away. At this point, how should Europe respond? You've seen the consequence of these attacks on Ukraine, indiscriminate shelling of civilian areas. What's the European response?
Well, I think today has been one of the toughest days to wake up to, where we see, as you say, and with the images that we see, indiscriminate killing of women, children going about their daily lives. This is a clear escalation by a panicked autocrat that has gone to the capital city of a country that is not only fighting for its territorial integrity, but fighting for the fundamental values of life, of democracy. This is on our continent, and it's up to us to respond. We have already done a lot with sanctions. It's clearly not enough. The Ukrainians are now asking for military help, and the European Parliament stands with that.
So, it stands with what? That's my question. Air defences?
Well,
I mean, what? Putting jets in the sky? What is the response? I mean, Putin has clearly identified that he has no limits at this point.
Yeah, you are right. First of all, we need to see the sanctions packages that we have adopted, 8 so far, which ones are biting, which ones need to be tougher, which countries are not implementing them. And the European Parliament has called for more military equipment to be delivered to Ukraine. Ukraine has very specific demands, whether it is with tanks, whether it is with heavier military systems. The member states have that equipment. They can come together and contribute with the weapons that are needed. If they coordinate, and this is what we're asking for, then no one member state needs to be, let's say, have a dent in its military capacity, which is being questioned in other governments, in other countries. But once we have that equipment, why not deliver it to Ukraine faster? If anybody thought that fatigue could set in and that we could look away, these images from today, the casualties that we see, how can we look away? And this European Parliament is one that is saying, let's make sure we do whatever it takes. If Europe doesn't answer, once that Putin did not stop, he's clearly not showing any signs of stopping, how are we going to respond? If our response is not proportionate to the escalation, then we're just going to keep seeing him killing more people.
Let's be quite clear. I want you to explain to our viewers what sort of teeth the European Parliament has at this point, because you've talked about countries that are not implementing sanctions. You've talked about countries who aren't contributing the sort of military hardware that Ukraine needs at present. These are decisions being made by European countries. You don't agree with them. You're telling me the European Parliament doesn't agree with those decisions. So let's start calling them out. What are countries doing now that they could do more of at this point?
Well, this is exactly the point. If there are tanks that are owned by member states, if they can be delivered to Ukraine, then let's be able to deliver them. We have already shown unprecedented unity, but now we have to do more. And that means that we show solidarity between each other, but Ukraine is asking for our help. And if they're asking for tanks, then let's be able to deliver them. That is something concrete that can be delivered, that can be done. Member states could do more, they should do more, and I think if today's images are telling us, and the actions that are showing us do not make those, let's say, member states go forward. And you said, what can the European Parliament do? This Parliament is made up of elected politicians from all member states. They are being told by their citizens, we are being told by our citizens to do more, and that's our responsibility. We are adopting decisions for quicker financial assistance to be arriving at Ukraine, to Ukraine. We are talking from a solidarity and actually on the ground perspective as a parliament, helping the Ukrainian parliament. I'm in constant contact with my counterpart, the Speaker of the Ukrainian parliament, passing legislation, taking decisions in order to add people on the sanctions list, giving more money, and ultimately, after today, let's get more weapons given to Ukraine.
Which countries could and should do more? Can you be clear, please?
Yes, I think all countries could and should do more. There are countries that have the tanks that have been identified by Ukraine. Let's say there are 2,000 tanks that are present in the European Union that can be given, and those, at least a few of them, should be sent to Ukraine. Ukraine is asking for them, and the European Union has the facility to coordinate what it gives to Ukraine. I know the High Representative is very much working on this. I know from a military perspective we can do more, and I think those countries, I would say all the way from Portugal to Romania, can deliver those weapons that are being asked for. And let me also be
the
clear,
impact this is having on the European country. Go on.
Yes?
Go on.
These are countries that have already shown unity, and they can continue to do that. I was, let's say, I continue to be encouraged by that unity. I know that Putin's interest would be...
That is what
Yes.
I want to pursue with
Yes.
you, because we talk a lot about unity, but the EU Commission President has urged further unity. Have a listen to what von der Leyen, clearly worried about that as we head into a very cold winter, had to say earlier.
Time and again, the single market has proven to be our single best asset in times of crisis. Therefore, we need to preserve it. It's of paramount importance that we have a level playing field and that we avoid fragmentation and distortion.
She is clearly concerned that Europe isn't playing together at present, or certainly has concerns that it won't play together going forward.
Well, the point of fragmentation is exactly what Putin wants. And I completely agree with the President of the European Commission in urging member states and their leaders to come together. There is an interest, let's say, on the extreme fringes of the political scene that would like that instability to be exploited. We in the European Parliament are here to take decisions in order to make sure that whatever help, whatever assistance can get to Ukraine does actually get there. And we are not going to be the ones, let's say, waiting for others to take the decisions before we do. I was encouraged last week, even though it's difficult to see these decisions being taken, especially in the background of an energy crisis, but by prime ministers saying we need to continue to get our act together, to come together, to show that unity. What we've seen today shows that Russia will continue to escalate further. Are we ready, is the question, to make sure that we can respond proportionately? And I think that this is a day when we have to be able to answer that question. Otherwise, not only would we be disappointing the Ukrainians, but we'd also be disappointing our citizens.